If you have some questions, that's fine.
What do you think is the biggest hurdle to get this bill moving forward? If we've got a number of supporters on the committee, what is keeping the bill moving forward?
You want to answer that? I think the biggest hurdle to bringing this forward is the legislative process. I personally believe that we need more bills to come to the floor of the state of Ohio so the voters can see how the representatives and senators will vote. And there are small groups of people that often say, I don't want that on the floor. I don't want to vote on that piece of legislation. I'm not afraid to vote on pieces of legislation and let the voters of Ohio see where I stand. When I ran for office, I told the voters of my district, here are the major themes and things that I stand for. And I see no reason to continue to uphold those principles. So it's through its committee process. It needs to be voted out of committee, and it needs to be brought to the floor so the people of Ohio can see if their government is going to protect their pastors and church property and provide them civil litigation coverage, which is all this bill does.
You said that you had been working the vote. Is there not enough votes to get it passed?
No, we know we have enough votes to get this passed.
So what do you mean by the legislative process then?
The people controlling what bills go where and what votes get out of committee and what votes get to the floor.
Has there been
Yes,
any,
ma'am.
Representative Vitale, can you tell us what we can do to get this bill out of committee?
Sure. The best thing that anyone in the state of Ohio can do is to call their legislator and ask for this bill to be voted out of the committee and to be brought to the State House floor for a public vote. Yes, ma'am.
Representative, in the last year that after the Supreme Court ruling, have there been any instances in Ohio of pastors being sued over their refusal to marry gay couples or marry others that they don't want to marry?
There has not, but there have been several different instances of religious liberty issues in other areas in Ohio, and there have been some other issues with other pastors being forced, sued, or fined in other states. So that's what we're trying to avoid here.
Can you explain, or someone explain, since we're not lawyers, how could someone succeed under current law with a lawsuit if a pastor denies or refuses to marry a gay couple?
Sure. That's a very good question. So we're one-handed here.
I'd like to weigh in on that.
Okay.
A lot of the clergy that have come are from independent or single congregations. They don't have a denominational support with a legal team, for instance. They really feel a little bit of adrift out there, and as far as legal protection at this time. I think a lot of the concern is among independent congregations that what will happen with us. And these lawsuits, a lot of times people, they suffer in silence. I mean, a lawsuit is presented, somebody challenges that congregation. It's not like somebody's running to their aid. There have been probates of same-sex couples who have asked congregations, I've talked to a number of pastors who said, we have been asked that if we would perform a same-sex wedding. So what we do know, and it's only been 10 months since the decision, eventually this is coming. And so this is legislation to protect what is obviously a threat that is coming and that is real, and that we see in other states that lawsuits have already been filed. There's also the issue within this legislation that affects the church property. We saw that in some of the discourse in those who oppose the legislation are trying to separate the pastor or the congregation from their property to have equal access to that property. That property is part of the church's domain and is under the auspices of the beliefs of that church society.
Any other questions?
One of the arguments I think made by an opponent was that, this, as you mentioned before, some of the opponents say this bill just isn't necessary under current law. They say, for example, Catholic priests cannot be required to marry Protestant, folks who are Protestant. How is this different? How would the, obviously Protestants are allowed to get married under law, just as gay couples are now allowed to get married under law. How would it be different in the circumstance of a homosexual couple versus say a Protestant couple who wanted to be, for some reason, to be married in a Catholic church?
Sure. Just to clear that up, that was said several times in testimony that a Catholic pastor does not marry Protestants. That is actually not factually correct. I'm sure everyone in this room has likely been to a Catholic church where there's been a Protestant and a Catholic married. So I just want to address that first comment that you made. But secondly, if you look back at the decision that was made in 1990 in the Smith decision, that was considered fundamental in eroding First Amendment rights, which is why in 1993 Bill Clinton passed the federal RFRA law. And people said much the same thing back in the early 90s. However, they were clamoring and saying, well, we do need to re-clarify the protections that we do or do not have under the First Amendment, because it doesn't specifically say in the First Amendment a pastor can't be sued or church property can't be sued if they don't perform the ceremony. And so this bill really follows along with that 1993 RFRA legislation that was signed into law by Bill Clinton to clarify Ohio law. And again, in this letter from American Freedom Law Center, when Attorney Robert Muse went through the Ohio Constitution and Ohio case law, he summarizes, there is no guarantee that the Ohio Constitution will provide the immunity from legal action that House Bill 286 provides as a matter of statutory law.